Italian Football Podcast.
Let's preview then that this semi-final, the Champions League semi-final between Milan and Inter, historic occasion it's going to be. And as I said at the start of the show, I have to pinch myself because I never thought this would ever happen ever again. This is kind of what we grew up on: Italian teams dominating in Europe, and Milan, Inter, but all the Italian teams get into the latter stages of European competitions and all Italian semi-finals. I never thought we'd ever have an all Italian Champions League semi-final, let alone a Milan derby. So, I mean, first of all, Nima, as a fan of one of these two teams, I mean, how special is it for the teams, for the city, that we've got a Milan versus Inter semi-final of the Champions League?
Well, I think from a mental point of view, and I think like in terms of the players and teams themselves, given where Milan and Inter are in the league table, and if Juventus get their 15 points back, I think it's almost certain now that one of them will miss out on top four. There's no doubt, because a Milan Euro Derby takes so much out of you psychologically, mentally, and also by extension, energy-wise, that I think it's a given that one of them will miss the Champions League, will miss the top four next season, and that the only chance to get to the top four, to get to play Champions League football next season, is to actually win the tournament for either one of them. And so that's how I see it, just from that aspect. But the Euro Derby is just unique. It's unlike anything else. No other city has this in this way. I mean, Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid have played in finals, of course, twice. That's the only thing you get close to it. But Atletico Madrid, with all due respect, does not have the pedigree that Inter and Milan have. They don't have European titles. They don't have European Cup titles. They're a good side and they have a great history, but they're nowhere near where Inter and Milan are in terms of pedigree, European pedigree, international pedigree. So it's incredibly, it's an incredible occasion. The prestige online is unbelievable. Inter, of course, have revenge to demand on Milan. 2003 lost the semi-final on away goals rule, playing at the same stadium and losing on away goals rule, which is so bizarre. Now that's not going to happen because that doesn't exist anymore, thankfully. Then you've got, then of course what happened in the quarterfinals is something we don't want to talk about because of what happened, the scandalous scenes of Inter's Curva throwing flares at Dida and so on. It was not a very nice thing. But no, this is going to be an absolutely electric affair. And both of them, I think, deserve to be there. I mean, Milan have sawn off good teams. Inter was in the group of death and finished above Barcelona, who look to become the champions of Spain. So they're no mugs. So no, they both deserve to be where they are. And it's going into what's gonna happen. Look, today, if you asked me today, if the game was played in 4 or 5 days' time, I'd say Milan are favourites because of how solid they look. But it's not being played today. It's being played in 2-3 weeks, and a lot can happen in that time. Football is fickle that way. Form is very decisive at this point of the stage.
Look at Napoli. Look at Napoli.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at how Napoli have changed in 20 days.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's going to be very, 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 very interesting. None of them, they will hope no players are suspended for this tie. Hopefully no one's injured either, and they can both come to this game at full strength. And I want to build on that. Milan Skriniar, I think this is it. Now, obviously, we know, we've been asked to talk about this by our patrons as well. Milan Skriniar has a real injury. People who are going full on, truth moment, Skriniar injury truthers can take a seat back, because now French media are reporting that PSG are considering pulling out of the deal altogether if he doesn't pass his medical. So there is an actual injury there of his back, and it's not getting better. But it's key for Inter to have him back for at least 1 or 2 of these ties. Inter need him now. And if they can't, then this is really going to cost him and Inter, because then he'll be essentially injured for 6 months with an injury that no one knows what's going on. or they do, but they're not talking about it. So Milan Skriniar is key, because when he plays to the right of that back three and Darmian can play on the right wing back, they know how to neutralize Leao and Theo Hernandez. Denzel Dumfries and Darmian, God, let's just say you might as well be playing with 10 men. So that's going to be key for Inter. And also, Inter, if we're perfectly honest, in these last few years, when in the actual derbies, Inter have played better than Milan, but it doesn't matter, because Milan, as Inter have learned, when you don't kill Milan off, they will come back and they will hurt you, and you will wondering how you lost a game you dominated. So what I want to see from Simone Inzaghi, I essentially want to see a very tactical battle. I want to see the kind of the Champions League final battle that Milan and Juve played. I want that. I want it to be a battle of the minds, rather than seeing one team bum rush and get hammered on the counter. So we'll see, but it's gonna be really, really interesting.
Bum rush, I love that. No, I think it's really hard to call. I mean, derbies are always hard to call. Like even we see it all the time. Just because one team's in better form than the other, it never goes to the form. Rarely goes to the form book. These derbies. We've seen it in Rome derbies as well. I mean, it's so hard to call. And I mean, I agree with you. I think if the game was played tomorrow, I'd probably go with Milan, because I think Milan are really well conditioned. They look really well conditioned physically at the moment. Milan do, and the defending so well as well. But every tie, every game is different. Tactically they're different. Different styles. Styles make fights. Styles make football games. I mean, it's so hard to call. I mean, I think the 4-2-3-1 or the 4-3-2-1 of Milan versus the 3-5-2 of Inter. How does that match up? Pioli versus Inzaghi. Who's going to win the tactical battle out of those two? That's going to be fascinating. Who will win the midfield battle? I think that will be key. Definitely. Will Milan play with a high or deep line against what is a slower forward line? I mean, the Inter's forward line is much slower than Napoli's. Now Milan played with a deep line against Napoli, more of a low block, and it was so successful in cutting out the space. Do they do the same against Inter, or do they play more attacking? Who's going to be the more attacking in this game? Is it good? Who's going to take the initiative in this? Because in the quarterfinals, the Benfica took the initiative in terms of possession, territory more. And certainly Napoli did against Milan. So like everything changes. It's going to be it's really hard to call. I think it's definitely a 50-50 tie as we speak now, but we see how things are in 3 weeks.
For sure.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be an amazing occasion. It's going to be an amazing atmosphere. I mean, the city's going to stop, isn't it, for those 2 days or even the days before. And
that week, the city's going to stop. The Milan for 6 days will be completely gridlocked with football, which is beautiful.